Hi, good evening to all our participants. Just give us a minute. We are just waiting for other participants to dial in. Thank you for your patience. And then we will start in probably 60 seconds. Okay, so good evening to all our participants from India and a bright and early good morning to our presenters from the team South Carolina. My name is Tarun Gupta and I'm the Managing Director of South Carolina Department of Commerce India Office. The India office was established in 2014 during the then Governor Nikki Haley's visit. And today the state has 5 international offices: Munich, New Delhi, Shanghai, Tokyo, and the latest one in Seoul. We are really pleased to welcome all of you to take time to join this virtual investor meet, which is the second of a series of such investor meet as we adjust to a new way of doing business. You ask any business person, current business environment is challenging. However, as one wise person said, every business, every challenge brings a new opportunity. This current pandemic will result in new business partnerships and new business models. Can South Carolina emerge as a preferred business partner for India? What are the opportunities, the challenges? This investors meet will aim to answer some of these questions. But the key question which this investors meet will aim to answer is why South Carolina is just right for business. That's the most important aspect for before making any investment decision. So this event we will talk about, we'll make a strong business case. What are the kind of potential customers cluster already existing, costs related to land, labor, logistics, power, regulations, ease of doing business, incentive, raw material supply. We will aim to cover all this in a challenging timeline of 60 to 75 minutes, which with no undue pressure to all panelists to make sure that they speak to their allocated timeline. And we at South Carolina India office are always at your disposal to make your future journey to South Carolina worthwhile and profitable. Thank you once again for the opportunity to be with you today. I'll be your moderator for today's session and ensuring to take all Q&As. With that, I invite our next speaker, Ms. Amy Thompson, Director, International Strategy and Trade, with responsibility of all international offices, to give her opening remarks. Over to you, Amy.
Thank you, Tarun. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for taking time out of your busy day to join us. We put together a great panel for you today, one that's truly representative of what we call Team South Carolina. You will find in the coming hour that our state has an incredible network of public and private entities that work with international firms on a daily basis. We truly hope that you will decide on South Carolina as you expand your business into the United States. And please know that once a company establishes a manufacturing operation in our state, they have access to many resources, including Commerce's existing industry program that works with the local county outreach team to help manufacturers of all sizes, as well as our export assistance program, which helps companies take advantage of the 20 free trade agreements the United States has with countries all over the world. As you consider South Carolina and the great opportunities set forth for you today, please know that Tarun and his team in India are there for you locally to help you along the way. And finally, I'd like to thank our partners in this effort, Dr. Raju Desai, past president of the All India Plastics Manufacturers Association, Dr. Jaimin Vasa, president of the Gujarat Chemical Association, Mr. Ramesh Patel, president of the Gujarat Dyestuff Manufacturers Association, and Mr. Shailesh Patel, President of the Gujarat State Plastic Manufacturers Association. We truly appreciate your partnership with us today. So Tarun, before I turn the program back over to you, we'd like to share a message with all of you from Governor Henry McMaster. Thank you again.
Hello, I'm Governor Henry McMaster, and I thank you for taking the time to learn more about the great state of South Carolina. With our great port, research universities, interconnected rail and highway systems, sunshine, and eager workers, we are already home to over 1,200 international companies, and we're ready to be home to more. You know that not long ago I had the pleasure of visiting the wonderful Sumter Clayton plant. So, have a great meeting, and I look forward to seeing you soon in South Carolina.
Thank you, Amy. And thank you for this governor video, which sets the platform. And I've also had the opportunity to visit Sundaram Clayton's plant with our then Indian ambassador last year, when the world was a bit more travel friendly. And with that, I request our next speaker, Mr. John Baggett, Senior Project Manager at South Carolina Department of Commerce, to give his presentations on the cluster, the incentives, the overall reasons for doing business with South Carolina. And here, I have to let a secret out. John has been visiting India for the last few years. And if you believe me, love for food is not one of the reasons why he visits India. He's visited Mumbai, he's visited Ahmedabad, and I can promise you, he has had all the local cuisines in both the respective cities. Over to you, John, for your presentation.
Well, good evening, Tarun and honored guests. Thank you for letting us take a little bit of your time this evening to speak with you about the attributes of South Carolina and what makes us just right for business. I am going to share my screen now and hopefully not have any technical difficulties so that we can run through a little presentation that I've put together. So I always like to begin my conversations with companies from abroad with just a geography lesson to share with you where our location is and some of the strategic advantages of South Carolina by our location. So we are located in the southeastern United States, the state that's highlighted in blue, on the Atlantic seaboard. The state is around 8,300 square kilometers in size and has a population of around 5.1 million. Which, Tarun, last time I checked, is about a little more than a third of the population of Delhi, or a little less than a third of the population of Delhi. So we are not the largest state in terms of population, but we are a very fast-growing state in the United States. We have been one of the top 5 states in terms of population growth over the last decade. And part of that is because we have an attractive quality of life and a friendly working climate that is attracting employers to locate into the state of South Carolina. Another attraction to the state is our location. As you can tell, we are crossed by the major highway network of the eastern United States. And because of this, you can reach roughly 66% of the United States population within a 2-day drive or within 1,600 kilometers of South Carolina. This makes us a very strong location for companies that are looking to do business within the east coast of the United States. And we're located between the major metropolitan areas of New York and Miami, Florida, which gives us great access to large markets. As Governor McMaster and Tarun had mentioned, South Carolina has become home for foreign investment. We welcome companies to invest in South Carolina from around the world that are looking to do business, and we feel that we do a very good job with our team of helping companies overcome the hurdles of establishing what could be their first facility or their 15th facility in the United States. So since 2011, we've had almost $18 billion worth of capital investment from foreign-owned companies that have created over 40,000 new jobs and represent 36 countries. There are more than 900 firms in South Carolina that have international origins. And as you can see from the map, they come from around the globe. European companies tend to be the largest employers, and that is due to our automotive industry. We have 3 European OEMs in the state, but we have a large amount of investment from Asia and from growing investment from India. So since 2011, Indian companies have announced 130 million and over 1,200 new jobs in the state. The largest of this investment was Sundram Clayton, who opened an aluminum die casting facility in the greater Charleston area related to the automotive industry. Additionally, India has been a great trading partner for South Carolina, with roughly $600 million worth of exports from our state going to India. So what makes South Carolina attractive as a place to do business? Over the years, our government has established an ecosystem and a climate that allows for business to operate and grow, and is extremely business friendly. You will find that South Carolina offers a low cost of business, below the national average. We are a very business friendly state. The quality of life here is excellent, and the cost of living is low compared to that. And that translates to being able to operate and run a business and pay your workers well, but not as high as you would in some locations in the United States. Electricity is lower cost here in South Carolina. Our electrical mix is a mix of fossil fuels and nuclear, but it is a very steady power base, so we don't have any issues in terms of sudden spikes in utility costs. They remain very competitive for industries. And construction costs are very affordable here. And we have a gentleman from Hood Construction, one of our construction companies, on the panel, and they'll be able to speak more towards that going forward. In terms of wages, South Carolina has some of the lowest average wages in the United States. And this is not to say that we are a poor state, but we are a very affordable state. So you find that the cost of living in terms of housing, food, fuels are very low. And so it's a very affordable place for your workers to live. And that translates into being able to pay a lower wage to give a stronger quality of life. But the most important thing is that South Carolina is a manufacturing state. As we like to say here, we like to make things. We make, as I mentioned earlier, we have 3 automotive plants. We have 2 airplane plants. We have a number of companies in the plastics and chemical sectors. And so we make things for the world here. And so for a state of just under 5 million in population, 200,000 of our citizens are employed in the production trades, and that number is growing every day. And so we are very proud of our manufacturing environment that we have in the state of South Carolina. South Carolina's business climate is strong, but we also help to make it better by a strong incentive program that we offer. I will not go into great detail with this, but I do want you to know that should you look to invest in South Carolina, we will work with your company to develop a customized incentive program that will offset your business costs so that you can make your investment and become profitable as soon as possible in the state. Our incentive programs are geared toward reducing those upfront costs so that you can do what you need to do to get your plant up and running and be profitable in the first years, which are always the hardest years when you're setting up a new facility. We have 2 types of incentive programs. Ones that are what we call statutory. That means that these have been codified into law for the state. And if you are a company that invests in the state of South Carolina, you are going to receive these incentive programs. These programs are geared at reducing certain tax liabilities that you may have to pay to the state, and they are geared to help reduce those liabilities based on the jobs that you're creating. We also offer what we call discretionary incentives. These are incentive programs that you have to negotiate with either the state or the local community that you are establishing your operation in. These can be further reductions in tax liabilities, or they can be programs that provide cash to help offset your investment, either through grant programs or a rebate program where we reward you for your investment, so to speak, and we help offset some of the cost for infrastructure that may need to come to a particular building or facility to help with your investment. So again, we work hand in hand with the companies to craft an incentives proposal for you and work through that process with my department here at the Department of Commerce. And so as your company looks to move forward with an investment in South Carolina, we will go into details of how these various programs work and how they can benefit you going forward. Additionally, South Carolina is a very labor-friendly state. We have the lowest unionization rate in the United States. And so that is a huge benefit for companies looking to invest here because you have that direct relationship with your employees and do not have representation between you and your employees. And so that is very attractive for companies that are looking to come here and something that we strive to maintain in South Carolina. South Carolina is a globally connected state. We are blessed to have a large port at the Port of Charleston and 2 inland ports as well. The Port of Charleston is going to become the deepest harbor on the eastern seaboard within the next 3 years. Currently, the port is investing roughly $3 billion on new port improvements that involve deepening the channel at the Port of Charleston to 54 feet. So it will be able to handle the largest ships in the world. The other day, a ship came through there that was carrying, I believe it was 26,000 containers on top of it. So it was the largest ship to have ever visited the East Coast of the United States. And Charleston will be able to handle those ships 24 hours a day. We are building a new port terminal at Charleston, which will be opening in March of next year. That will be an intermodal port terminal, meaning the container ships will be able to come in and containers will be able to be shipped inland to your facilities or to customers via highway access or via rail connectivity, which will be available at the port. We have 2 Class 1 rail carriers in the state, and those are Class 1s are the major rail carriers. Norfolk Southern and CSX Transportation, and they interconnect with the greater rail network throughout the United States to move cargo. So the Port of Charleston is also the most efficient port in the United States of America. The average turn time for a container to come off the ship and leave the gate is under 1 hour. And so it is a very efficient port. Which means your product are not sitting on the terminal waiting to get to you, they're on the way to you. And the port is currently averaging about 8.5%, 9% growth per year in container volume, but we expect that to increase even further with the new improvements as well. On another note, the Charleston port is the #1 port for the import of natural rubber in the United States. And this is because of the tire industry that we have in South Carolina. South Carolina is home to 5 tire manufacturers and is the #1 producer of tires in the United States. And so the port is very important to that industry and to other industries in the state. And again, we have two inland port facilities that you'll see. One is in the upper part of the south of the state in this area, and then one on the eastern half. And what those do basically are move the port inland for companies. So a container can come into the Port of Charleston, it is put on rail and then transferred for that location, and it doesn't, quote unquote, clear the gate until it gets to that port. So it's a very good tool for companies that need the port but don't necessarily want to be right next to the port. An overview of the plastics industry in the state. So South Carolina traditionally in our history of industry was a textile state. And so the plastics industry kind of grew out of that originally. And again, we've been able over the years to attract others in the industry, particularly related to the automotive industry. As I mentioned, we have 3 automotive OEMs, BMW, Volvo cars, and Daimler cars. And so we've seen a large growth in particularly plastic injection molding related to the automotive industry. We've seen a lot of growth in consumer plastic goods. We have several companies. Nanya Plastics, a Taiwanese-based company, has a bottle facility in the state. Berry Cap, which is a Canadian company, has a facility manufacturing caps for the bottling industry. Charter NEX Films just recently opened a facility in the state where they are doing plastic film for the packaging industry. And Polyamerica recently just built a large blown plastic facility where they are making garbage bags for the consumer market. So a lot of different variety of plastics industries in the state, and they're scattered throughout the state. You do not see any, in a lot of countries I know, you see specific zones that are developed for certain industrial sectors. In South Carolina, what we have seen, the location mainly depends on what your needs are. And so you'll see in that upper corner of the state on the left side, you see a cluster of plastics industries. Those are mainly related to the automotive industry because that's where BMW is located. Along the coast, you'll see a cluster of them. And most of those are logistics-oriented companies that are transloading resins and other materials out of the state at the port. And then you'll see in other areas they're located because of some utility or logistics needs. So we welcome industries to locate in any part of the state, and we want to find the right location for that company based on what your needs are for that facility. As I mentioned, just a few of the plastics companies that are located in the state. DAC America is doing PET, Johnson Controls is doing automotive plastics, Berry Cap, several other ones in the state, and several more that I have not mentioned. And again, the plastics industry is employing right around 20,000 people in the state right now. As for the chemical industry, so there are about 200 chemical-related companies in the state, and they employ around 23,000 people. The chemical industry really grew out of the textile industry in South Carolina. And you saw companies that followed the textiles here or grew out of them that were making specialty chemicals for the textile industry. And then you've seen changes over the years to folks that are more related to the assets that are here. Just to go through a couple of companies, BASF has a large facility in the state doing specialty chemicals. Milliken is one of the companies I mentioned. They grew out of the textile industry. United Phosphorus, which is an Indian-based company, has a fertilizer facility in the state. Fujifilm has been in the state for over 30 years, and they make specialty photographic films for various fields in the state. Charles River is an interesting company. They were a homegrown company, so to speak. They were started in South Carolina, and they make reagents for the medical testing industry. So They have developed a process for making, reagents to be used in the testing field utilizing biological means of the raw material. Evonik is a German company, and they make precipitated silica, and they are here to support the tire industry. So I mention all these names just to let you know that South Carolina has a wide variety of companies in the area, and we're open to more companies coming in. Our team works with our 5 foreign offices to identify companies that are here and to help you, or that have a need to be in the United States, and to help you develop the business case for setting up that facility in the state of South Carolina. So we work very closely with our team in Delhi and our other teams, and we are here to assist you in any way we can. And with that, Tarun, I will turn it back over to you. And I want to thank you all for your time this evening.
Thank you, John. And before I allow you to leave, John, I would take you up on one point you mentioned. Our state is a manufacturing state, yeah? And surely the whole regulatory process is also geared towards supporting manufacturing. Anything you would like to comment on that?
So in terms of supporting manufacturing, we, as Amy mentioned, we are here to help you in the long term. So we have assets that can help you not only find the location for you, but to help you develop your workforce, grow your talent, and make sure that you have long-term success here in the state. And so that is, kind of been our secret recipe over the years, for lack of a better word. And the reason we have been successful is that we welcome the manufacturers and we take care of them once they get here.
Excellent, John. And John, so to summarize, clearly the cost of doing business is low, whether it's cost of power, which you said is amongst the lowest at about 6 cents, whether it's low unionization rate, amongst the lowest in the country, whether it's strong incentives, and incentives being broadly dependent on 4 things: the quantum of investment, the nature of jobs, number of jobs, and what part of the state. A very strong port which on the eastern seaboard, which is very efficient, and of course a large and existing chemical industry, which is also supported by an ease of process on the environmental regulations. To summarize, and I may come back to you later in the Q&A sessions for some more details. Thank you, John. With that,
correct. Thank you, Tarun.
Thank you, John. With that, I request Dr. Raju Desai of All India Plastic Manufacturer Associations for his remarks. And I echo Ms. Amy Thompson's comment. It's a privilege, Mr. Desai, to partner with yourself and your association. And over to you, Mr. Desai.
Thank you, and very good morning to all the panelists from South Carolina, and good evening to my colleagues from other associations who are participating in this meet. It is very exciting for us to know. Let me tell you about All India Plastics. All India Plastic is working for the cause of Indian plastic industry since last 75 years. We have 4 offices throughout the country, including Delhi, Chennai, Mumbai, Ahmedabad, Calcutta. And we are representing interest of Indian plastic industry, and we are a bridge between the processor and the government. So that's our job. And we are taking a lot of initiatives for the growth of Indian plastic industry in terms of exhibitions and upgrading the skill of manufacturers and stuff like that. So having said that, it is very, very interesting to hear John as far as South Carolina is concerned. And it's good to know that you have more than 300 companies who are already established in South Carolina. I have one question. Do you have any incubation centers for new entrepreneurs who are entering US? Especially, I'm asking this question because most of our members are a medium-sized, medium-scale industry. So I just want to know whether, because some of the states I heard that they are having this kind of incubation centers through which they allow them to enter the state and then work with them to develop the business, distribution network, and then manufacturing. So you have something like...
Yeah, I'll start, and Amy, please feel free, John, to come in. Uh, uh, Mr. Desai, we have something called a landing pad program, which is absolutely meant for companies who want to first test the waters, see how the business picks up. And that landing part works very strongly with our alliances, wherein there is small office space available for companies to dip their toe in water, as we say. And then also we have in tie-up with our technical colleges, where they could use some of the existing infrastructure, whether it's for prototyping, whether it's for testing. So those details are there, and our post the event, we'd be happy to circulate details of that program for your members.
Sure, thank you.
Thank you. With that, I request now Dr. Jamin Wasa, President, Gujarat Chemical Association, for his opening remarks.
Good evening, everybody. Mr. Tapan, Miss Amy, John, my senior colleague, Dr. Raju Desai, Eliza, my partner association and president, Mr. Ramesh Patel and Shailesh Patel, and also Mr. Tushar and Charles Stewart and my panelists, and the participants who have taken part in this particular wonderful, exciting session. As a president of Gujarat Chemical Association, it gives me immense pleasure for being a part of this, organizing the very interesting and exciting, very important, this business session for the expansion in South Carolina. Friends, just to give the idea, our association, Gujarat Chemical Association, will be completing 75 years in 2022. It was started in 1947, in the year of independence of India. And we have more than 700 members, almost manufacturers, and particularly few traders are there. And as rightly said, the GCA provides better services to members by providing effective and valuable information, organizing seminar, webinars, and many exhibitions, virtual exhibition. And we have organized many programs during these years. Of course, nowadays we have to work only by the webinars and virtual activities. Friends, and as you know that Gujarat is now contributing more than 60% of India's manufacturing chemicals and petrochemicals, and around 35% of the exports of chemical from India has been done from Gujarat. Friends, I am happy to inform you that there are a tremendous, when after John's presentation, I was excited. There is a tremendous business opportunities available in chemical and plastics industries in South Carolina. As we all know that South Carolina is located on the US East Coast, halfway between New York and Miami. South Carolina's growing network for more than 285 chemical manufacturing companies and suppliers and distributed across the state includes a wide range of chemical manufacturing operations, which is really give us the very much excitement to enter into the US market so far as the chemical and the allied products are concerned. And it is the same. I'm happy to know that chemicals is the second largest manufacturing subsector, contributing around 3.6 billion to the South Carolina state's economy. The United States is a leader of in innovation, and as rightly said by asked by Raju bhai, that yes, a small kind of incubator will be very helpful for a small and medium scale of chemical and plastic industries or industrialists to enter into the South Carolina with this kind of innovation and incubation, which will help them to know the business opportunity more in South Carolina. And I'm happy to state that, and I'm confident and I'm assured you that once the things become normal, I will organize a delegation for chemical plastic manufacturers and members to South Carolina to find out more possible opportunities in South Carolina. And I would also love to see that, because I have been told rightly that warehousing is also a very good opportunity for South chemical industries, not only warehousing, even incorporation of the company to enter into the US market is also a very good opportunity in South Carolina. And as you rightly said by Mr. John, The labor is cheap, electricity is cheap, and cost construction and land, everything is rather compared to other part of USA is quite economic, and that attracts us to see that, because now the business concept is you should go near to the customer. Now you cannot do the business while sitting at one place and doing the business other. So now everybody has to go near to the customer, and US is a big market. And after this India, China, US, China, some issues, we see more opportunity in US by the Indian manufacturing companies and Indian traders and Indian business people to USA. And also South Carolina has always attracted the leaders of industry across all the fields. I could see from the presentation, almost there is a presence of 36 countries in South Carolina so far as the business is concerned. And I'm very happy that chemical industry is giving the employment of more than 25,000 employees over there. So South Carolina, according to me, is the right destination for Indian manufacturers if they really want to expand their business in South Carolina. And dear friends, there are many reasons to choose South Carolina, because more than 1,200 operations of foreign affiliated companies are located in South Carolina. And South Carolina Department of Commerce believes every business, large or small, deserves every benefit they can get. So that is why South Carolina Department of Commerce works statewide operations to attract the investors over in South Carolina. And friends, I would not take much time, because I would once again, I assure you that we will take a delegation to South Carolina to find out more and more business opportunity. As last year, I was the president of Gujarat Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and while during my tenure, we have taken the delegation to almost 6 countries. So we would now, our next destination is South Carolina, and I would like now request my colleague, Mr. Ramesh Patel, President of GDMA, to few words about his association and his activities. Ramesh, please.
Thank you, Dr. Vasa. And after hearing from you, Dr. Vasa, I have a concern on my job, because you've mentioned about South Carolina so eloquently. And once you take the delegation, I promise you there are good vegetarian restaurants as well, because I'm a vegetarian. So I say it with true heart. Over to you, Mr. Ramesh Patel.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Tarun Bhai. Very good morning to South Carolina, and very good evening to all of you. As a president of GDMA, I am happy to take part of this webinar. Dear friends, the GDMA is apex body of all dyes and dyes intermediate manufacturers in Gujarat, established in 1962. Started with 7 members only. GDMA has grown in a large association today, compiling approximately 1140 members. There are other members also. All the manufacturing unit of these GDMA members, and providing service to members throughout Gujarat from its premises located in Ahmedabad. The rapidly expanding growth, profit, and glorious past achievement is indeed a matter, a pride of satisfaction. It has engaged as an apex body representing 80% dye stock manufacturing of Gujarat, contributing approximately 60% of total export of country. This unit have a combined turnover of about 25,000 crore rupees. The dye stock industries of Gujarat generated more than 1 lakh direct employment and 1.5 lakhs indirect employments. The dye stock industries in India has some inherent strength, as a result of which shown rapid progress. The main users are the textile and leather goods industries, which are themselves growing very fast. thereby creating a large domestic market for dyestuff. Export of dyestuff and dyes intermediate as per Canaxil record. Canaxil is a recognized body for India. It is established in 1975 and there was only 356 crore rupees. In 2017-18, this figure has come to a volume of 52 lakhs metric ton with a value of 2,400 million US dollar. And also domestic sales approximately 9,500 crore rupees. The sector has performed well in spite of tremendous competition from China and other countries. Increasing availability of basic feedstock, chemical engineering industries, availability of skilled labor, trained and plant personnel, high degree entrepreneurship and low overhead cost. Added advantage enjoyed by these industries. Our many members are planning to invest outside India for this expansion program, and I feel the South Carolina is the best place for the expansion program. As explained by Dr. Vasha, dear friend, with all these benefits for our future expansion, South Carolina is the best destination. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Patel.
And I would request my another colleague, Mr. Shailesh Patel, President, Gujarat State Plastic Manufacturers Association, to deliver his address.
Good morning, panelists from the South Carolina, and good evening, other participants from India. See, I'm President of Gujarat State Plastic Manufacturers Association, having 3,500 plus members. And as rightly pointed out by Raju Desai, that we are from the same field. Plastic associations, both are from all India, and I'm from Gujarat State. So we are working for the cause of betterment of plastic industries in Gujarat as well as in India. As during this pandemic, EPMA and GSPMA have joined hands, and we have worked a lot for the peoples of the plastic industries. And this year is the golden jubilee year for Gujarat State Plastic Manufacturers Association. It was established in 1970, and this 2020 we are completing 50 years. And after 20 days, 15 days, Gujarat State Plastic Manufacturers Association is organizing a virtual Plexpo 2020 from 27th of October to 1st of November, where nearly more than 100 participants will be there, and visitors will be around 5,000 plus visitors will be there in this exhibition. And as everybody knows that Gujarat is a plastic hub, almost 70% of the raw material produced in India is produced in Gujarat. And machineries, almost 60% plastic machineries are manufactured in India, in Gujarat, total of the India. And processing is also Gujarat as well as Silvas and Daman. It is 40% of the total plastic processing is being carried out in Gujarat. So, and as rightly pointed out, that South Carolina is the right place, as I have visited South Carolina in earlier days in 2004, as rightly pointed out by Mr. Tarun Gupta, that there are a lot of vegetarian restaurants are there, because I have stayed there for 10 days and I have never found any difficulties in finding any vegetarian restaurant. And another thing is, weather is also almost same like Gujarat. So investment, and it will be a very big opportunity to invest in the South Carolina. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shailesh Patel. I did forget to mention about the weather. It does not snow or hardly anything over the last 6 years since I've been visiting. And again, a big thank you to all our partners for these wonderful remarks. And of course, this gives a good platform to welcome our next speaker, Ms. Eliza Buxton of the Link Economic Development Alliance. And Elisa, now you have the platform. You've heard from all the industry associations, a lot of members who are keen to set up in the United States, keen to look at your South Carolina. So over to you for your presentation, Elisa.
Thank you very much, Tarun, and thank you all for joining us this evening. I appreciate your taking the time. I'm going to start my presentation here, and hopefully it will work. Oh, goodness. Bear with me 1 second. Apologies for the delay. Hold on 1 second. Give me just a moment.
No worries, Elisa. We can have the moderator start the presentation if that's okay with you, and you could
That
just
would be
give us
fine.
and you could just give us a pointer to move the slides. Over to you, the moderator, and I request you to start Elisa's presentation, please.
Thank you. Can I run it?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay. Again, thank you for joining me. Apologies for the technical hiccup there. I represent an area of South Carolina called the Link. There are 8 economic development alliances in the state, so that when you come and visit, you can get a real regional flavor of what these different and unique areas have to offer. But I can assure you that every single alliance will work to make your experience in South Carolina as seamless and as successful as possible. If we go to the next slide, the Link region, we feel, is a wonderful place to locate and grow your business. We have logistics, access advantages, sites and buildings at the ready, infrastructure in place. We negotiate the local incentives. Each alliance is able to do that in their specific region. We have workforce and talent development programs, employers that are here, manufacturers that are here that we take very good care of. And we boast a very exciting and relaxing quality of life that I'll get to address shortly. As John mentioned in his presentation, I think you have a good understanding of where South Carolina is. The region that I represent is basically in the center of the state. We are 100 miles from the port. We have access to major international airports, along with regional airports. And I don't think we need to spend a lot of time talking about specific location. I think what really is of more interest to you is the availability of sites, land, and industrial parks. I would mention that our region alone has over 1,337 acres available, dispersed between 5 certified industrial parks. In addition to that, our region has a 1,000-acre mega site. These areas are zoned for light, medium, and heavy industrial. And to give you a sense of the cost, I know there were some questions about land lease or land purchase. Our thought is that land is so reasonably priced that it makes more sense to purchase it than to lease it. Typically, acreage runs anywhere from $10,000 to $25,000 an acre in our specific area. I can't speak to cost in other regions of the state, but again, the alliances that represent those regions can address those questions. The slide that you see now is just an example of 3 of the 5 industrial sites that we have. You can see the layout We have currently a speculative building available in one of the sites. It's a 50,000 square foot building. It's expandable to 200,000 square feet. It is located in the Black River Industrial Park, where you see the master plan. That park also houses 2 Caterpillar plants. In addition to that, there is a plastic manufacturer located there, a Chinese company called Sumter Easy Home that does plastic injection molding, and they manufacture home organization and housewares that they supply to both Walmart and Lowe's. Also, you'll see on your screen the I-20 Industrial Park layout. We believe that preparation, when it meets opportunity, leads to success. So in the I-20 Industrial Park, we have 3 pad-ready sites underway, one 80,000 square feet, one 150,000 square feet, and one 250,000 square feet. You'll also see a master plan for our one of our industrial parks, the Pocataligo Park. That is currently a greenfield site, but you can see a rendering of what a layout of different spaces and facilities would look like. If we go to the next slide, our industrial parks have all utilities in place: water, natural gas, electricity, wastewater, and telecom. And you'll see at the bottom of the screen a rendering of the spec building that has just been completed in Sumter County. We also, if you go on to the next slide, have some unique regional assets that are of interest. Our region is located where we are within a 50-mile radius of more than 20 universities. So we have quite an emphasis on talent development and workforce development, and I would say that that's universal across the state. Central Carolina Technical College does have an advanced manufacturing technology training center. You can see the variety of available certifications there. We had discussed briefly the landing pad program that we have. This is just an example of one of the facilities where an incubator space or landing pad facility could be located, where you would be able to interface with students and professors who are exploring and studying the exact skill sets that you would need in your workforce. Another unique feature about our region is that we are the home to Shaw Air Force Base. And this is the home to the 20th Fighter Wing, the 9th Air Force, the 3rd Army, and the new drone unit. So it's a large population. It has a huge economic impact regionally. But what may be of interest to you is that 40 to 80 airmen transition out every month. And these folks bring highly skilled, highly trained experience and abilities to bear in the workforce. So we have a pool of people that is constantly becoming available that is very well trained and can be retrained for whatever it is that you may need. If we go to the next slide, I just wanted to point out a few of the large industrial employers that are found here in Sumter and Lee counties, which is the area that comprises the link. We have BD, Becton Dickinson, which is a plastics manufacturer of blood collection devices. They're quite busy right now in the midst of the pandemic. We also have Ems Chemi, a Swiss company that does polymers, and I mentioned Sumter Easy Home earlier that does the injection molding. But what really will whet your appetite is our quality of life. So the next slide, you'll just see some examples of the different things that we have going on in this area. I will say, since I've been here, I have overbooked myself rather successfully with things to do that I just never thought living in a more rural environment would provide, but it is affordable living, great schools, shopping, restaurants, hospitality, recreation and fitness, festivals, easy access to the beach, easy access to the mountains, and a very, very welcoming environment where we really want to see you succeed and continue to be successful while you're here. I will be happy to entertain any questions. And I thank you once again for your time and look forward to welcoming you to South Carolina.
Thank you, Eliza. And I can vouch for the hospitality for a lovely evening when we visited your office on the rooftop. So that stays fresh in the memory. And just to summarize, if I heard you correctly, because that's a very important statement you made, that the industrial parks, you could buy land from $10,000 an acre to about $25,000 an acre, which come in with all utilities. And in rupee terms for the audience, this is from about 7.5 lakh rupees to 20 lakh rupees an acre, ready industrial site with all utilities. And Elisa, if I may also ask, what are the kind of long-term lease available for buildings at prices for warehousing? Any ballpark range?
I don't off the top of my head, but I can certainly find that out. And it really would just depend on what it is and what kind of upfitting, if any, needs to happen. So we can certainly look at that.
Excellent.
And that.
Thank you, Lisa. The whole land prices and ready availability of industrial parks at those prices is music to most of the Indian businesses. And I have smiling faces on the panelists. With that, thank you, Lisa. And I request our next speaker, my good friend Tushar Chiklikar, as the name indicates, has strong family roots in western part of India. And I have to let out a secret, Tushar, don't kill me for it. He has a particular fondness for a drink which comes in western part of India, which shall remain unnamed. And he has a lot of experience on working with Indian companies on the whole legal aspect, nuances, and fortunately working in a state where the legal nuances are less. So over to you, Tushar, for your presentation.
Thank you, Tarun. It's always good to see you and always good to speak with companies from India for both professional and certainly personal reasons. I visited India many, many times. I was hoping to visit again this year, but hoping for next year. So maybe I will see some of you in person there. So I shall share my screen now. So again, as Tarun said, I think what you've heard thus far from John and from Eliza, certainly from Amy and others, is that there are some significant factors in South Carolina that allow businesses to be successful, particularly international companies. You've seen that particularly in the plastics arena as well, whether it's low taxes, strong regulatory structure, cheap land, a number of factors. In addition to that, as you might imagine, there are a number of legal issues that one must consider when considering a setup in the U.S. and in South Carolina in particular. In this way, much like Tarun, Amy, and others' John's job is easy, my job is a little bit easy as well, because our legal structure in South Carolina is very beneficial for businesses. So in the time I have allotted, I'm going to very quickly discuss some of the legal issues that you might be considering when setting up a business in South Carolina. As you can see, it's a very simple process. So first, you might recognize some of these phrases. C corporation, S corporation, LLC. These are business organizations that are forms and options for companies to set up in South Carolina. The two most common are C corporation and then limited liability company. C corporation is what you would consider a traditional corporation in the US, with shareholders, a board of directors. It provides liability protection, but also does provide for taxation at two different levels. But there is a strong reason to utilize a C corporation as you initiate setup in the US, and I'll cover that momentarily. Additionally, there's a limited liability company. That is a relatively new, maybe the last 20 years, business organization form. That business organization form really provides protection both from a liability perspective, but also from a taxation perspective. There is not a double taxation implementation when it comes to limited liability companies. The other three on the screen, joint venture arrangements are very common. Those then in themselves are not separate business organizations. Typically what would happen is In this case, an Indian company would enter into a JV with a U.S. domestic company, and then set up some sort of business organization. But that is often an entry point for companies because for the obvious reasons of having the goodwill and customer base already that comes from the domestic company. So this is a very common structure. And again, I'm gonna walk through this very quickly, but this is a very common structure we see. And this provides both liability and tax protection. And so you've got an Indian parent company. That's your Indian company that's 100% owning a C company, a C corporation in the U.S. We call that U.S. holding company a blocker. Why do we call it a blocker? We call it a blocker because it helps prevent the Indian parent company from being subject to U.S. federal income taxes or South Carolina state income taxes. Typically, when there is a sales office that's opening, which is an entry point for a lot of companies, they set up a C corporation. And then if and when they get to the point of establishing real estate, manufacturing facility, for example, then you see two different LLC structures that come into play that are very common. But typically, again, sales office, small office to begin with, the C corporation is where most companies, Indian companies, start. So from an income tax perspective, after the Trump tax cuts, there's a flat corporate income tax rate of 21%. India is one of the countries that has a tax treaty with the U.S. So what does that mean for repatriation of income? So if you have an Indian created C corporation in the U.S., because India has a tax treaty with the U.S., instead of 30% of the income going back to the mother company being subject to U.S. taxes, only 15% would be. And then on the India side, there would also be a credit for the taxes paid. South Carolina itself has an income tax, one of the lowest in the entire Southeast. Yet again, another benefit for doing business in South Carolina. And on top of the low tax rate, there's a number of credits and exemptions that are available to even further lower that income tax rate. Incentives, I'll cover quickly. This happens to be my personal specialty along with corporate and real estate work. John has covered this earlier, but here's what I would say on this. There's a number of different incentives. They are varied and they can be tailored to fit a company's needs, whether it be from early cash or long-term savings, job training. South Carolina has one of the best job training, worker training programs in the entire U.S. Other states model it after the U.S. or after South Carolina. And I'm saying all this from the perspective of, I represent companies. So I work closely with them as they are working with the state representatives to establish their business units. So I see all of the company side and their reaction to these kinds of incentives and programs that are available. So many times we have immigration issues. Unfortunately and oddly, India does not have a treaty, an immigration-based treaty with the U.S. It should, but it doesn't. So here are the three general types of visas that are common. I think everybody knows B1 visas. That's a fairly common one. L1 and H1B are the two that are most often utilized by Indians while trying to come into the country. But unfortunately, there is in the U.S. currently, there is a complete ban on any additional L1 or H1B visas for any country until the end of the year. And that's largely pandemic based. But as you can see, there are some visas available for highly technical positions, for managers. But it can be a process that you want to plan for on the front end to make sure that that the process is as seamless and efficient as possible when obtaining it. Now, this is a federal issue, not a state issue. So this is going to be an issue that applies throughout the entire U.S. So now back to the state issues, environmental. This is yet another area where the state of South Carolina stands out and really differentiates itself from other states, even in the Southeast. It's a very business-friendly environmental permitting structure. It is headed by the South Carolina Department of Health and Environmental Control. That is a sister agency of the South Carolina Department of Commerce. And I can speak with firsthand knowledge that they are extremely easy to work with. Permitting is extremely quick as compared to other parts of the US. Some common issues for manufacturing companies and certainly for plastics companies, on the front end, wetlands designations are going to be important when you're trying to determine a site. The Department of Commerce is very knowledgeable on these issues and can help you locate a site that minimizes wetlands designations or impact. Also for plastics companies and chemical companies, air permitting and then process wastewater permits are important as well. These are processes, again, that are quick, but they are processes that should be jumped on and discussed early in the process. Many states impose additional obligations onto companies beyond just what the federal standard is. Our state does not do that. Our state has the minimum federal standard as opposed to additional standards that some other states layer on when it comes to permitting. We received a question regarding single-use plastics. So there is not currently a statewide policy when it comes to single-use plastics. Some of the counties in the state, some of the cities in the state have adopted, ordinances or laws to somewhat limit the use of single-use plastics. But at the state level, the State General Assembly, which is our legislative group, they are considering legislation right now to oppose that kind of restriction because of the impact it has on our companies. So very quickly, and in closing, as you're operating, here are some additional considerations, especially as you get to the point of a manufacturing setup. Construction, contracts can be very key. Charles certainly represents a contractor that's on the other side of the contract from companies. But I think what's important, that's not always the case in India, is that contracts are very well respected and there's developed areas of law when it comes to contracts. A written contract matters in the US. The sanctity of the contract matters in the US. There's also additional general standards for products. We call that in the US the Uniform Commercial Code. So if the contract is silent on an issue, there are fillers for certain provisions. Intellectual property, this is one where many of my clients, even if they're setting up a small sales office, they don't realize they need to make sure that they're not violating any US intellectual property rights of another company unknowingly. And that's a very simple process to determine whether or not that's the case. Labor and employment, that's a blend of federal and state law. What I would say is, what's important to you is that we are a very low unionization rate state. This is what we call a right to work state. And the legal system and the business system is set up to minimize that kind of employment disruption for companies in South Carolina. And then finally, there's a dispute resolution mechanism in case there is a company that has a conflict with another company. There is a developed system in place to handle those in an orderly fashion. So Tarun, I know that was very quick. We could spend an entire day talking about these issues, but I did want to touch on them in a high level way.
So thank you, Tushar. And I picked up on a very important statement, what you made, which is very relevant for plastic, chemicals, dyestuff companies in India, is the environmental regulation. And Tushar, you made a statement that the state follows the federal minimum standard. Just so that I've understood it correctly, that means as a state, we will have the federal minimum. So any other state may have higher, but as a state, South Carolina has those federally minimum standard. So that means for any other part of United States, they would be the most pragmatic regulations. Am I right in understanding that?
You are correct, Tarun. I mean, many of the states that I have found that Indian companies especially look for and look at have heightened restrictions, more restrictions than the federal standard because they have the ability to approve those. Our state does not. And let me just quickly, Tarun, say, we will welcome you when you come. There's a very strong, I've lived my entire life here. There's a very strong Indian community in South Carolina. And vegetarian or non-veg, we can make sure that you are well fed and you enjoy both the business and cultural benefits of living in South Carolina.
Excellent, Tushar. Thanks once again for your great presentation as always. And I'm sure a lot of companies may have further queries, which we will do post the event. And with that, I bring our final speaker, Mr. Charles Stewart from Hood Construction, to give us an overview on the construction, because most of our companies, Charles, would either looking to use existing facility or even build on their own, considering the fact that land is very reasonably priced. So over to you, Charles, for your comments.
Yeah, thank you for having me today, and thanks everybody for your time this afternoon. I'll share my screen. Again, I'm Charles Stewart. I'm a senior project manager with Hood Construction here in South Carolina. We're located in the center of the state, and we cover the entire state. So I'll offer our perspective as a construction manager who operates throughout the entire state. As we begin, I wanted to share one experience that we've had recently with ushering a Brazilian company, a chemical company, into the state. This company, they produce additives that go into different plastics, and they distribute those throughout the entire world. So they decided to come to South Carolina, and I just kind of wanted to share some of our experience with them. And when they were looking at sites in the entire country, they zeroed in on South Carolina really quickly because of a lot of the incentives that were mentioned before. And then when they started looking into logistics, the highway and the rail and the port were very attractive, and it really zeroed them in the center of South Carolina. And we worked with them. This project was completed a couple years ago. From start to finish, from the time they selected the site to finishing the project and then moving into their facility was about 2 years. And a good success story of how that process works throughout the, we worked with the designers and the owner throughout the entire process and helped, get a lot of their items, from Brazil into the state, and the process went relatively seamlessly. We've touched on some of this, so some utility infrastructure considerations with our state is with INBRA, one of their key components was access to raw materials. A lot of the raw materials that they needed for their process were located in the Southeast and in South Carolina specifically. Again, transportation, port, air, and rail. We have one of the most efficient ports on the Eastern Seaboard. Air, throughout the state. Highways, can go anywhere throughout the nation. And rail, for that specific project with Ember, we actually extended the rail to their site and built about a mile of rail. Again, that process was able to be completed within that 2-year time frame. So to get them up and running quickly. We have many shared developments in industrial parks. The industrial parks may have some pre-engineered or pre-developed sites that are move-in ready, and lots of shared developments that have the infrastructure in place, sewer, water, power, and gas that are already close to the site to create a quicker building experience. Also, as far as infrastructure goes, power and gas in the United States and in South Carolina specifically are not only very economical, but very consistent. A lot of our clients have very critical processes, and seldom do they even have the need for emergency backup power generation on site. Some people do as a backup just in case. But we see that as not being a huge need for most of our clients. A little bit about land and construction cost. We touched on this a little while ago. So in a kind of a more on the lower side of things, we may see land prices in the $20,000 to $30,000 an acre range. And in more of a developed scenario, and this covers the entire state. So different areas may tend to be in the lower end or the higher end of this scale, but in areas that are more developed and may have all the utilities ready, highway, rail, and air, nearby, you could see up to $200,000 an acre in the upper end of that. And going into construction and design cost, the site development cost range, and this is the cost to complete the grading and complete the utilities and complete the stormwater development on site. We can see range from a little under $300,000 an acre, up to $400,000 an acre is a range there. Building costs, and this is just construction cost, based on kind of a typical 50,000 square foot building. If you're looking at just a basic storage facility with a slab walls and a roof, just building only costs would be a little bit under $100 a square foot. And a more complex manufacturing facility, they would have more, air conditioning, process piping type of needs. You could see up to $200 a square foot. So again, a big range, but just really depends on the use of that building. Wanted to hit on construction labor force. One thing that we've touched on a little bit is in the state, we have a really strong education system. We have a really good tech school and trade school system that helps train a lot of our people for various tasks. So the labor force can be difficult no matter where you are in the state, but we seldom see our clients have real issue satisfying the jobs that they need to do to produce their products. Lastly, I wanted to touch on design construction schedule. Our typical projects we see from the time it is conceived, from the time it is completed, taking approximately 2 years. And half of that, the first half is design and permitting, the second half being construction. So again, that can be advanced significantly, or it can take a little bit longer depending on some decisions and requirements that you may have. So with that being said, we really appreciate the opportunity and appreciate your interest in our state.
Thank you, Charles. That gave us a good overview on the construction costs, the average build. Could you also tell us, Charles, I was very interested in the image which you showed us. If you have some information, what was the timeline for, one was the regulatory approval and second for the construction for that kind of facility, built up area, ballpark?
Right. So that project was probably, it was right around 2 years, and the first half was spent in design, budgeting, and permitting. And then it was 8 to 8.5 months for construction. So that particular project, under 9 months completing the construction, and the balance of that was permitting, design, and budgeting. And we went through a few different phases. Most of our construction firms in the state are very flexible and used to working with clients that have different needs and can help work through different budget scenarios for the client to make sure they maximize their dollar.
Excellent. Thanks, Charles. With that, we formally come to the end of all our presentations and keynote remarks for this evening. However, I have a lot of questions asked during this last 1 hour, 75 minutes. Some of them we will go back with the detailed information dossier. However, if I may begin, Charles, with yourselves, with few questions which I would like to take on. Anything you would like to comment upon? I've been asked in terms of the hurricane zone and how is that? Is that a major factor? This question is both for you, Charles, as well as for John. How is that a factor for companies selecting our state?
Okay, it's certainly more of a factor when you're immediately on the coast. We haven't seen any issues, inland from the coast in quite some time. Most of our buildings are designed and built to a standard that can withstand, the typical hurricane that we may see. We have not had any impacts from hurricanes, as long as I've been in the business. That's not to say that we should not expect one, but most of our new projects are designed to a level that can withstand the effects of the hurricanes. And if I may, I saw one question about the land cost. Land cost in certain areas can definitely be in the $20,000 to $30,000 range per acre, but in certain parts of the state, particularly near the coast, near the port, that may be a little bit more developed, you will see land cost that could approach, you know, $175,000 to $200,000 an acre. But again, anywhere in that range is possible. It's just a matter of what type of property is needed and how well developed that it would need to be before it starts the process.
Yeah. Now, Charles, I'll also clarify. I've seen some questions. The land prices vary tremendously within the state. As Elisa mentioned, in her part of the state, it can be from $10,000 to $25,000. We reiterate that. And for example, in an industrial park where TVS is located, Sundaram Clayton, that was about $50,000 acre. So the range is there. If you are right next to Charleston Port, what Charles mentioned, of course, the land prices would be closer to the $200,000, which is there in any part of the world. But if you're 30 minutes away, it's not uncommon to have land prices in the range of what Elisa has mentioned. I hope that clarifies some of the questions which we have had on the panel. And we would be happy to share details of various industrial parks, various sites with land prices. We'd be happy to share that. We have some samples, and that's something we'd be happy to share post this panel. John, going back to the question on environmental regulation, which Tushar also touched upon, anything you would like to mention, the fact that how well we coordinate with our DHEC, the environmental, as commerce, as project managers?
Sure, Tarun. So as part of our coordination, we actually have a liaison at the Environmental Permitting Agency, South Carolina DHEC, who works specifically with economic development projects and companies looking to come in. And so she is our coordinator, and we have meetings early in the process with the DHEC officials to ensure that there's complete understanding of the permit process on both the side of the company and with the environmental regulation group to make sure that it runs smoothly and efficiently for companies coming in. So it's worked out very well. I'm actually working a project right now that wants their facility to be up and running in June of next year. And we're having a meeting next week with DHEC to begin the permitting process for them.
Excellent. Thanks, John. And while I have you, John, would you have any indication on long-term leases for warehousing? Any ballpark range would you have top of your mind?
Again, lease rates are going to be similar to land costs. They're going to vary between, based on the location that you are, but also based on the quality of buildings. So you may find a new built warehouse building in the Charleston region and again, it's going to depend on your square footage too. So the more square footage you need, the lower the lease rate's going to be. So it's really going to vary. But I mean, typically, and Charles, feel free to add anything, but you're looking at, you can see lease rates anywhere from around $3 a square foot to up to $7, $8 a square foot, and that's going to depend on a lot of factors.
Got it. And these are annual lease rates, and typically lease terms
Correct.
are signed for 1 year, 2 year, 3 year durations?
So typically you will see the lease rates are annual. So it would be, let's just say $5 per square foot per annum, and that is divided by 12 and you make a monthly lease payment. You typically see most leases are signed for a minimum of 3 to 5 years, and they're longer term leases. There are some buildings that are available if you need short-term space that may be willing to do a year-long lease or an 18-month-long lease for you as well. It just really depends on your need. South Carolina has a good mix of warehousing product available for people looking for it.
All right. Okay. So $3 to $8 annual is not unheard of. Of course, it will vary according to the location and the quality of the build, but that's a ballpark range, annual rates. Moving on, Amy, I have a tough question for you. In terms of, we all heard about the weather. We don't have extremes. 40 degrees for us in India is not extreme weather, which is there in Charleston. We are all used to 40, 45 degrees. We heard about, fortunately, state not being as adversely impacted as some of the other neighboring states in the severity of hurricane. Any idea of the demographics in terms of the age of the population workforce? That's a question we've been asked. Any comments on that? And then my next question would be to Tushar.
Yeah, so I actually was typing an answer to the median age. So it's around 38, but you have to take in mind that this is for citizenry in South Carolina. A lot of people come to South Carolina to retire. So that may be skewed a little bit because of the older people who have lived here or are moving in. But we're seeing, I think John had mentioned, our state is growing at an average rate of 7%, and the national average is around 4%. So we're getting a lot of young people in. There are some technology corridors that are very attractive to young people moving in from very expensive places like San Francisco and Austin. They're coming here. And also, as Eliza mentioned, we have a great military presence. So we're having people retire early and then going back into the workforce. But we can get you some concrete numbers on the actual workforce age.
All right. Thanks, Amy. I know I'm 2 minutes short of our scheduled closure time. So Tushar, no pressure. And I have two questions, Tushar, for you. One is, Tushar, on any restrictions on foreign ownership and foreign shareholding. If you could give us some insights on that. And second question, which I have just been asked in terms of effluent discharge norms and to take water intake as well. So I don't know whether you or John would like to take that question. Over to you, Tushar. And thereafter, we'll have to close the session and we'll take all other questions offline. Over to you, Tushar.
Yes, thank you, Tarun. The answer to your first question is an easy one, especially as it relates to Indian companies. There are no foreign restrictions when it comes to ownership of business organizations in South Carolina. Also, I failed to mention earlier how simple the process is to establish a business organization, whether it's a C corporation, a limited liability company, or another form in South Carolina. Typically, you're going to want to work with your CPA, your tax professional, along with your attorney. But that process, once you've made a decision from a tax perspective, a setup can be done within 1 day's time. So it's a very, very quick process. But again, your first question, no such restrictions that would affect Indian companies. As to the second question, the effluent discharge norms, I don't know the answer to that question myself. I can certainly have it. I have a team that works for me, some of whom work in the environmental space specifically. But one thing that is of interest is that while more and more processed wastewater, for example, is being pumped into the public systems, South Carolina still does have the ability in certain places, depending upon the levels of effluent, to actually have the discharge run into streams and rivers. Which is unusual and certainly a more pro-business friendly perspective when it comes to this. John, I don't know if you have anything more to offer. I can find the technical answer and provide it, Tarun.
Thank you.
Yeah, Tushar. So Tarun, I typed in some notes in the answer for that. But what you see, most cases, the effluent is determined by the location that you go to and what the local municipal waste system can handle. And companies tend to work hand in hand with the local municipality to, if they're going to use a public system, to have some what we call pre-treatment, where they're getting their effluent down to certain levels of dissolved solids or metals or anything so that the municipal plant can handle it. And as Tushar mentioned, there are some areas of the state where with proper treatment on site, you can do direct discharges into, rivers or streams.
Okay.
And again, that goes back to our conversations we have with our environmental regulation folks early in the process.
I've shot my time by 1 minute. So again, I know it's been a very interactive session. I still have a host of questions, which we will take it offline. And so my final comments is, once again, thank you to all our partner associations at the outset. Mr. Desai, Dr. Vasa, Mr. Shailesh Patel, Mr. Ramesh Patel. It will be a privilege to support your member companies as they look to United States to have that first presence of the United States in our state. Please feel free. You have all our coordinates to send us as many questions as you have of your members, and we'll be happy to send bespoke answers and research to those questions. I would also take this opportunity to thank all our panelists for waking up early in the morning. I know maybe even the sun was not out in certain instances, and preparing for this presentation and answering all our questions. Be rest assured there are more questions to come. And we look forward to seeing you in India soon. And also likewise, we'll take up Dr. Vasa on his offer and have the delegation visit South Carolina. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we formally conclude this investors meet, and thank you once again. And we look forward to taking the discussion forward. Have a lovely day and a lovely evening ahead. Thank you so much. Thank you.